It's 12 o'clock Central Standard Time. You are seeing several gentlemen down here at the bottom. Again, I'm Kevin Harding, and today we have a very special guest with us. We have Kevin Grimes, who is the top MLM attorney, period. Worldwide, he travels all over the world to meet with clients, and Keith is going to introduce Kevin.
And so what I wanted to do on this hangout is I wanted to invite Kevin Grimes, who, as Kevin Harding has already said, is probably the #1 compliance attorney in the world. When people are starting up, they go to Kevin. As a matter of fact, Kevin said to me just a moment ago that he's getting about a new client every week, startup companies coming to him. And so Kevin's a very busy guy. He knows this industry. He knows what's legal, what's not, and his job is to try and keep people from getting into trouble with the SEC and other regulatory offices in this country and around the world. So, Kevin Grimes, it's wonderful to have you. Thank you for representing us and for being on this hangout today.
Thanks, Keith. It's an honor to be here. There are about 6 different areas of consumer protection law that potentially can apply to MLM compensation plans or MLM programs. Anti-pyramiding laws are probably the most well-known, but securities laws can also apply, franchise and business opportunity laws, referral selling laws, lottery laws, and a couple of others. But in terms of pyramids, yeah, I understand exactly where you're coming from, because that's something, we get a lot of questions from people about, gosh, isn't such and such a program a pyramid, or this other program a pyramid? And, sometimes they are, like you said, and sometimes they're not. But almost invariably, most of the people who are asking the question, or most of the people who are making the statement, really have zero clarity on what a pyramid really is. And I'll ask them that question. It's like, well, what's your understanding of the statutory definition of a pyramid? And they'll throw something out that is usually miles away from what the true definition is. Let's define, let's talk about the statutory definition, because that's really the measuring stick by which regulators and courts analyze and scrutinize programs. So at both the state and federal level, this is generally true around the world. A pyramid is defined as a program in which participants, and that's an important word because anti-pyramiding statutes don't speak in terms of distributors or non-distributors. They speak in terms of participants. A program in which participants receive compensation that's derived primarily, not exclusively, but primarily, whether directly or indirectly, from the introduction of additional participants into the program, as opposed to the definition of legitimate legal multi-level marketing, which it sounds very similar, but in reality, it's the diametric opposite. An MLM program, a legal MLM program, is one in which participants receive compensation that's derived primarily, but again, not exclusively, from the sale of goods or services to end consumers. So even in a legitimate MLM, recruiting, whether it's distributor recruiting or customer acquisition, is involved. It's an integral part of the program, but what ultimately produces the compensation for the participants is the sales of the company's goods or services. So that's the key. One is primarily distributor or participant recruitment based, and the other one is primarily sales based. So to your question, what are some of the factors at which they look? Really, and one of my favorite questions to ask entrepreneurs, whether distributors or whether corporate personnel, is, what do you believe is the single most important factor in the ultimate legality and viability and longevity of the company? And 140 plus years of direct selling history in the U.S. teach us it's value, the value of the products or services that the companies are bringing to the market. And the reason that value is so significant, and a lot of people are surprised to hear lawyers talking about something that's as fundamental of a bottom line business issue as value, is because where there is no value, there really going to be no sales. And if the program isn't sales based, there's only one other option, and that is it's recruitment based. So again, value is really the cornerstone upon which a legitimate company is built. Because regulators and courts, they really scratch their head where there are no sales of a company's goods or services to people outside of this group of distributors. And one of the things I love to tell clients and also distributors, and it's probably the biggest secret today in direct selling, and I'll share it with you guys. You might want to write this down because this is huge. A lot of people don't know this. Customers are good for business. They really are. But again, the paradigm in the minds of the regulators and the courts is if a company doesn't have customers, and their definition of a customer is somebody who's purchasing the products simply because of their intrinsic value and who are non-participants in the company's compensation plan. Okay, so customers are good for business. Regulators like to see them. But something, Keith, something that you and I have talked about for a long time is one of the realities in direct selling is that, and this is true industry-wide, at least with legitimate companies that are offering legitimate goods and services at a fair value, one of the realities is that 70 to 80% of the people who get involved with direct selling companies really just want to be customers. How do we know this? Well, we know this because they buy their products month after month, but they don't do the things that distributors do. Like, they don't enroll any other distributors or customers. They never qualify to earn compensation. But like I said, they're buying that product passionately month after month. By their behaviors, what are they telling us? Answer, they want to be a customer. And so, one of the things that I like to discuss with the executives and leaders is one of the overarching realities in this business is you don't want everyone in the world as a distributor. You do want everyone in the world as a customer, because everybody in the world doesn't want to be a distributor. And so, we want to find out, where do you fit, and also understanding you're bringing two discrete things to the market. Number one, you're bringing, products that have the potential to make a massive impact, massive difference in somebody's life. That's the customer opportunity. In addition to that, for people who are interested in the income opportunity and who are passionate about marketing and selling your product, fantastic. We have an opportunity for them too. It's called the distributor opportunity. But again, everybody in the world is not going to be and should not be a distributor.
Now, Kevin, what would you say to our leaders that are on this call today we're as a company, we're making sure that we comply. What must distributors do to comply?
Okay. Well, I think one of the several things that are important. When we look at what are the hot topics for regulators, income claims is always at the top of the list. Okay, this area of law is really counterintuitive because people don't understand. Gosh, if it's really true that I make $2,000 a month, if that's truthful, if I can substantiate it, with copies of checks or tax forms or whatever, why is it illegal for me to share this truthful, substantiatable information with other people? And the answer is because there's a third factor that goes into the mix called deception, and the regulators and courts have concluded that, for example, income testimonials. There are many other types of income claims that can be made, but I'm talking about income testimonials right now. Without complete information, income testimonials are deceptive. And the reason they're deceptive is because it leads the reasonable and prudent prospect to believe that everybody in the company makes $2,000 a month, or most people make $2,000 a month, or it's easy to make $2,000 a month. None of which are true. And so, distributors being educated about what are the rules regarding income claims. That's a really, really important piece, because this is a thermonuclear white hot topic for the regulators. Now, I don't want to dissuade people from making truthful income claims, but here's the thing. Like every income claim, whether we're talking about hypotheticals, whether we're talking about lifestyle claims, which include showing pictures of big cars, big homes, exotic vacations, and of course the darling of the income claims arena, which is income testimonials. All income claims, with the exception of statements of average earnings for all distributors, are deceptive. Okay, but the good news is there is a really easy cure to the deception, and it's called an income disclosure statement. Now, the challenge for new companies is until they've been in business for at least 6 months, if not 12, they really don't have the data with which to prepare an income disclosure statement. But once they have it, my recommendation is that they prepare one and they provide it to the distributors. The beauty of an income disclosure statement, of a proper income disclosure statement, is with it, the company and every distributor can make all the truthful income claims they want to make. I mean, it is a supremely powerful marketing tool because it is the cure to any of the potential deception that's associated with an income claim. So that's number one, Keith, is learning how to make proper income claims. And so what that means is, whether you're doing a one-on-one, whether you're doing a home meeting, anytime you're talking about the compensation plan, every prospect needs to receive a copy of an income disclosure statement. So again, I appreciate you haven't yet officially launched yet. You haven't been, or at least I don't think you've been paying compensation. But in any event, you certainly haven't been around long enough to have the data to be able to compile that. But when you do, certainly recommend you get that out. I'd say a second area has to do with how distributors present the opportunity. The good companies, they pay these overpriced lawyers lots of money to review their compensation plan and get everything just so. But you can have the most legitimate compensation plan in the world, but a handful of distributors, if they misrepresent the compensation plan, they can easily turn it into a pyramid, a security, a lottery, a franchise, or something else. So sticking with the compensation plan, not embellishing it, not using words, sometimes, and the vast majority of mistakes that people make really are innocent mistakes. When I say vast majority, I mean like 98%. We do a lot of distributor compliance. And again, most of the missteps that people make, they just do out of innocent ignorance, lack of information, if you will. So for they'll say things like, well, you invest this amount of money with the company. No, you don't invest with the company. When you start talking about investing money, it smacks of a security. Another thing they'll do is, even though it may, cost very, very little to sign up as a distributor, they'll say, well, you have to buy this inventory of products, or you have to subscribe to this list of services in the hundreds and hundreds of dollars, and that can trigger state and federal franchise and business opportunity laws. So again, sticking very closely with how the company presents the compensation plan and not operating outside of bounds is very important. And in saying that, when people, when most people hear the word compliance, I think that's an ugly, ugly word. It's really not. Compliance is all about helping the distributors stay in business, helping the company stay in business, and helping each individual stay in business. And my paradigm for compliance is, a lot of attorneys have this most attorneys are great at saying no, and it's kind of like trying to play football or soccer, this little 10 by 10 foot square. You really can't do that. The reality is we have this huge piece of real estate, roughly 100 feet wide, 300 feet long, and my approach to compliance, and I know your philosophy as well, Keith, is let's teach people how to take advantage of every available square inch of space. Let's throw some bombs. Let's run a bunch of different plays. But let's also understand there are very, very clearly defined boundaries, and we can't operate outside of those boundaries ever, okay? But let's learn how to take advantage of all the real estate, all the space that we have to build this business.
And Kevin, I thank you for your time today, but I want you to know, and also certainly our viewers to know, that when Kevin and I started this company, Kevin Harding and I started this company, we said that this is not just a little short-term venture for us to make some quick money and get out. That's not our plan. Our plan is for this to be a long-term business where you can build a business, you can pass it on to your family. We want to be here for the long term. And the only way that Victory 100 can be here for the long term is that we as a company comply and you as members and distributors comply. And so we are going to have a department that is watching distributor compliance, because we don't want any rogue distributor to go out there and damage something for all of us. And so we are going to watch that. We're here to make sure that this company is here for the long term, that you can feel confident that you can go out, work hard, invest your time, your energy, your resources to build something that will not be just taken away in a few months or a few years, but is here for a long time. Kevin, do you have any closing comments that you would like to make before we hand back to Kevin Harding?
Sure. Well, let me just echo and reinforce what you just said about compliance. Again, a lot of people think that's an ugly word. My hope and my encouragement to your leaders is that they'll really embrace it. And I know this is your philosophy too, Keith, that the first function of compliance is not about thumping people. It's not about trying to catch people doing things wrong. The first function of compliance is protecting the company, protecting every distributor's hard work, protecting that legacy. The second function of compliance is education. Again, it's not about thumping people. It's about educating people. Like I said, the vast majority of mistakes that happen innocently, and the vast majority of people who make them are very, very happy to bring their behavior, their operations into compliance. And so, again, it's all about education. Only when the company has really no other choice. I mean, there are some bad actors out there. The good news is they're really quite rare. But but when you encounter somebody who says, you know what, I'm going to build my business any way I want. I'm going to say anything I want. I'm going to do anything I want. Well, that's probably somebody with whom we need to part company. But again, I don't want to leave people with this sense that gosh, Victory 100 is all about we're Big Brother. We're going to be checking out everything you're doing. It's like, no, that's not the philosophy that's guiding the compliance function of the company. It is about protection. It's about education first and foremost.